Oi, headhunter. What is up, everybody? Happy Monday. Here coming live from Wisconsin, and I am excited today. We've got Brian Herzig with us. Brian is also representing Wisconsin, which is always really cool for me to highlight people that are doing amazing things in recruitment. And Brian has a ton of experience. He's been in the recruitment game since 2013. He spent a lot of time with Robert Half, and now is a managing director over at Vaco. And so, Brian, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. And I know we were supposed to go through the event link that we had, and I think a couple people have turned up. So anyone who is tuning in out there that was part of that event, I apologize. We had some technical issues, but we're here now. So, Brian, how are you, man? What's new with you? How's life?
Life is good, but apparently there were some technical issues on this podcast I'm supposed to be on, so that's been a little bit iffy. Other than that, life is good, Joel.
You know, it's so funny. I don't know if you heard of Clubhouse at all, or is that yeah. So, with all of these technological advances, like Clubhouse is a funny one because you'll get like bad connection and it boots you out. And it's the same with these live streams. It's like you hop on, and I think in the first 2 episodes of this season, we had people with their dogs running around. We've had kids. I've even had people just like open the door behind me. And and looks like we got some comments already here. So someone said, love the Vaco culture. LinkedIn user, you better change those privacy settings so we can see who you are. But no doubt there. So Brian, I'd love to hear from you, man. Why don't you share a little bit about how you got started in the industry, and kind of how you got to where you are today? I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Well, it was a really organic experience. So I used to be in sales, and I guess I still am, but I started out just doing small business sales. I worked for my family's small business for about 13 years. And when you work for a small business, you really understand what makes a business tick. You sign the checks, you sweep the floors, you do whatever you have to do to make things work. So after about 13 years of doing that, I needed to stretch my wings or whatever. I needed to try to do something more. And I had a cousin, worked for Robert Half for some years, and he was in staffing. He said, Brian, you got to try this. This is something you'd be good at. And I listened to him. I met some folks over at Robert Half, and sure as heck, they offered me a job, and I was an account executive there placing IT professionals. They taught me everything I needed to know about the business. I worked for a really great guy, worked with a really strong, top producing team, which in this business, your team is everything. So I worked for a really great team. After about a couple years at Robert Half, I got the chance to lead my own team. So they took me from the Milwaukee office to the Mac. So I moved over there. And again, I had some really strong players on that team as well. And we started beating the Milwaukee team on the scorecard every week, which was a really big deal. So we were smaller, and we were beating. And I was beating my old team. So it was cool. After a while of doing that, a couple years in Madison, I got a chance to take the big job in Milwaukee. So now I was in charge of the whole Robert Half Milwaukee office. And that maybe I might have gotten on some other people's radar. Vaco knocked on my door back in 2019. I wasn't looking for a job, but after talking with Vaco, Joel, there's a reason someone said they love the culture. Vaco's a place where you go to graduate. You go, they look for the biggest boy on the block, they hire him, and then they build an office around him. And I got the chance to be the person they're going to build the office around. We launched our Vaco Wisconsin office right April 2020. I don't know if you recall April 2020, but apparently there was a virus downturn. The economy got a little bit tough, but we came
I've heard of it. You heard about it? Yeah, I caught into that.
Something going on there. So we launched right about then. No excuses, man. You just play the hand you're dealt, and we did. And we had a really, really strong opening year. I couldn't have scripted it better. And so now I'm sitting here with you.
Awesome, man. Well, I mean, there's so much there. One of the things that we discussed was how did Vaco kind of convince you to get away? And one of the things you had mentioned to me was that the recruiter was really persistent. So why don't you share a little bit about that? Because I thought that was actually really interesting, like their approach in recruiting you. They sounds like they didn't give up. So why don't you go into that story a little bit? I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, and that's something that recruiters, sales, you got to be persistently cool. You know what I mean? You don't want to be desperate, but you want to be there. You know, you don't want to be like the guy that doesn't have anything going on and no one wants to work with that person. You want to be somebody that's got stuff going on, but you're always there. And that's exactly what the Vaco recruiter did. Her name's Hillary, and I owe Hillary my seat. If she wouldn't have knocked on my door, I wouldn't be here. So she hit me up. Gosh, I think it was like September, October, 2018. And I told you I was happy. I didn't even respond to her LinkedIn request. But then she did it again. And something had changed in my head at that time. So I responded to her. And now this was probably Thanksgiving 2018. So we started chatting on LinkedIn a little bit. She was telling me more about Vaco and sounded great. And I was a little interested, but it's the holidays. I'm not going to make any changes. So we just kind of tabled everything. And then again, she and I started talking. She initiated a conversation a month after Christmas is over. So right around February, end of January, she and I started talking again. So keep in mind, she hit me up like October, and now we're going October, November, December. Now it's January going into February. 4 months had passed, and she was still persistently cool. And so
I love that.
That's when I started to get engaged. And by the time I met all the people at Vaco, this was probably, March 2019. That's when I actually interviewed for the gig and met everybody. I was sold. Like by the time I left Vaco, I'm like, please pick me. I want this gig. But it took months. It took almost half a year to get me there. You gotta keep knocking on the door, and always knock on the door with a persistent attitude, but don't knock on that door like you need it to happen, because then you get too pushy. And that would have made me back away. And Hillary did it exactly right.
Well, I did notice here too. So it was Jamie Collier. She was the one that said love the Vaco culture. So why don't we talk a little bit about that culture? Because I hear this all the time. I don't think I've ever worked with a company that said, hey, we've got terrible culture and major issues. So I'm always curious, like, talk to me about that culture and how that outworks. And obviously in the recruitment world, and especially the agency recruitment world, I mean, it can be kind of a tough world to be in. So talk to me a little bit about the Vaco culture and how they were able to pull a top producer, Robert Half, away and kind of, what was it about the culture and what was it about the interview that really attracted you to them?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to talk about there, Joel. So Vaco was founded by 3 guys, from the industry, and they founded it based on an idea, an idea that you can do this job, you can play hard, but it doesn't always have to be about a number. It can be about relationships. It can be about the person in the seat. So rather than a number to hit, Vaco's set up for the person in the seat that you're trying to recruit. It's all about finding people you want to hang out with outside of work. We spend so much time at work. If you're sitting in a room with a bunch of people you can't wait to not be around, you're going to have a problem with your culture. You said something about everyone says they've got a great culture. Well, that's just the thing. People that have a bad culture, they don't know they have a bad culture. That's just what they've got. Vaco, it shines a light on what's possible, what could be. So we have core business tenets, and these core business tenets they're the things that make us tick. So one of the best ones, I'll share a few of them with you so you can maybe understand the culture we're dealing with. Vaco was designed for a talented malcontent. We always say that. Our CEO loves saying that. And so we say outlaws welcome. It's one of our core tenets. If you're somebody out there that doesn't feel like they're fitting into the puzzle of the culture they're in, maybe you should take a look at Vaco, because we won't just make you fit into our puzzle. We're going to throw our arms around you and fit around you. If you play the game like we do, we're going to throw our arms around you and make sure we fit into you. So outlaws welcome. That's one of our biggest core tenets that spells out our culture. But here's what I love. This one is it's just my favorite one. It is something that if you live your life this way, all the drama goes away. So picture this. What we always say is assume positive intent. You'll always have an opportunity to be insulted. Don't take it. Assume positive intent in the people you work with, the people that are around you. When that happens, drama it goes away. Don't push over and don't keep getting taken advantage of, but assume the person you're talking to means you well. And that's important. We also want people that stay electable, stay coachable, play till the whistle. And then the thing that maybe is like the umbrella of our culture is we're all proud to wear the jersey. We're proud to wear the Vaco jersey because we all have the same sort of idea that we freed ourselves by joining this company. And now we get to play the game the way we want to play it with people who play it like we do. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to hop in a couple of these comments. I just love to say hi to people. So Haluzi just says hi, and we've got Savannah out there, Ramgor. I think that's hello. And then we've got someone from Northern Germany as well. So Sandra, welcome. And it sounds like Jamie, she just said, I interviewed with Vaco Nashville right before COVID hit last year. Everything went on hold. Might need to revisit that conversation. Love the idea of leveling up and working with the best of the best. I love that too. And one of the things that I thought was interesting that you said was, that approach in terms of like, finding, it sounds like, finding the with the candidates, like finding like where they hang out. Are you talking about like the Vaco internal candidates? Or you're talking about that's your approach to recruiting as well? I'd love to kind of have you expound on that. And because you said like we don't put numbers around that, so I'd love to hear more about that because I haven't heard anyone say that yet.
Well, so when you're recruiting, no matter if it's internal or for candidates you're going to place, you got to recognize that we are all people. When you're recruiting somebody, it's your job. So when I make a placement or I'm recruiting somebody, that's my job. But for every person I place, my life doesn't necessarily change. But when you're recruiting somebody and you're putting them in a new role, their life totally changes. You've got to recognize that, whether you're internally recruiting or you're recruiting for a client. You're the one that's going to change a life. And you want to make sure you change it for the better. Always change it for the better. Do no harm, right? So that's what we talk about when we're talking about trying to make it work for the person. All those core business tenets, those are our internal business tenets. But they can be applied to anything. They can be applied to life. When you're working with a client or you're working with a candidate, you have to make sure you understand the relationship here. They're putting their trust in you. You are in a very unique position to either make their life a lot better, give them very good advice, or if all you're worried about is putting up a number, chances are you're going to make the wrong decision for that person.
So it does, and I'd love to, with like KPIs, for example, then how are you building the KPIs around what makes someone successful, and how are you guys motivating? Because it sounds like obviously numbers matter at the end of the day from a business standpoint in terms of like profitability and all of that. So how do you build that into how you work as a team and constantly go above the goals that you guys are setting? I'd be curious to hear that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So KPIs are almost a swear word at Vaco, but clearly there are certain things you've got to do this job right. So that's why we tend to go after the people that already know what it takes to succeed in this business. So I'm hiring right now internally for my office. I'm going to grow. I'm going to beef up our team on all fronts.
The Milwaukee squad?
What's that?
The Milwaukee squad then, or anywhere?
Yeah, we service the whole state of Wisconsin. But cool. Yeah, Milwaukee squad's a pretty good name. Maybe we'll get a T-shirt made up.
I love it.
But what I'm looking for, Joel, and this is what Vaco looks for, is I want someone whose manager isn't me. I want your paycheck to be your manager. I want your lifestyle to be your manager. You know what it takes to pay your mortgage, pay your rent, whatever, buy the car you want, take care of your kids, buy the clothes or the handbags you like. You don't need me to tell you to pick up the phone. You don't need me to tell you to go out on a client visit. But the reality is there are certain numbers that are indicators of success. And on the sales side, it's how many people you're visiting with. You and I, Joel, have spoken on the phone a bunch of times. We've texted, we've looked at each other via LinkedIn. Talking right now, I feel closer to you. I know you a little bit better. It's a different sort of a vibe. That's important when you're doing business development, getting in front of clients, talking to them, sitting at the table from them when you can. And then with on the recruitment side, it's all about interviews. You got to bring in people. You've got to bring in people, find out what they're looking for, find out what would make their life better, and then you go and you get it for them. So if I had to do a KPI, answer your question, long story short, interviews and client visits is going to equal success. What I'm looking for out of life, though, is I want people that already know that and want to come in and put up numbers because it's what they do. It's not what they're told to do.
I love it. I love it. Oh, I mean, you bring up a great point too. I mean, at the end of the day, one of the things that I do see, when there's such a focus on, for example, cold calling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, cold calling isn't it's not putting up cold calls. It's part of it, but it's got to come from, like you said, that understanding of here are the results I'm looking for as an individual, and now I'm just going to do whatever it takes to get to that point. And maybe for someone that's 20 calls a day, maybe for someone else it's 150 calls a day. But whether or not you do the activity to get the results, that's on the individual, and that's more of a motivation. So I think that's super interesting. What about in terms of like the culture? Would you say there's a heavy emphasis on competition or collaboration? Like, what's that like? Because obviously at a lot of recruitment agencies, it's like highly, highly competitive to the point of it's almost hard to feel happy for someone because it's almost like their success is a slap in your face. So what's that kind of culture piece like? I'd love to hear.
So you don't get into this business without, well, I guess you don't succeed in this business without a level of competitiveness, with a competitive nature. But one of our tenants is proud to wear the jersey because we look at ourselves as a team. So we all want to succeed. In order for all of us to succeed, each of us needs to succeed. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it does in my head. So what we want is we want people that are in it because they want to win, but they also want to see their teammates win. Yeah. So my office in Wisconsin, I have a culture too. I have certain things I took from the Vaco culture that I want to expand upon. And rule number one in the Wisconsin office is we come in every day for each other. We're there for each other. We're there to make sure that, all right, Joel, you need to take some time off. I'm going to handle your business for you, take care of you. There's no credit fighting. There's no backbiting, none of that. And that is rule number one in my office. So I want you to bring it, and I want you to want to win, but not at the expense of your teammate. That's not tolerated. That's taking it too far.
Yeah, I love that. And looks like Nantel, she just said, love, assume, positive intent, which I think is huge for recruiters. I mean, it's super easy to get down and out because obviously it's like when you're reaching out to people, you're going to get a lot of responses. So I love that. And then Michael just said, excellent point of view. Recruiters can positively impact the lives of many people. The best recruiters make this a top priority. Couldn't agree more. And then Jamie, we finally she got out of private mode, so that's cool. She said self-management is key to success in the bullpen. Love it. And Bear said, love the approach you guys are taking. Aim for deep relationships with client, build trust, stay in front. So it's interesting too. I'd love to dive into that a little bit because you're talking about the client visits. Have you been doing those like via Zoom recently, or are you still trying to get in front of people physically? And how has that changed things? And is that an approach that you took at Robert Half as well, or is that something that's just with Vaco where they're like, hey, get in front of clients? Is that something that you personally just do and you brought, or was that with like a Vaco culture?
No, that Vaco didn't invent that one. That's getting in front of your clients. That's just no matter what kind of sales you're in. That's just good advice. You just go do it.
Yeah.
So, to answer your question about getting in front of people, this is all about the relationship and knowing your clients. Some people aren't comfortable with face-to-face meetings right now. So no, you don't push that. You do a Zoom, you do a Teams. But those that are comfortable with it, you go see the environment they work in. You go ask them about their business. You go find out what's important to them. What problems are they solving? There are things that keep each and every one of us up at night. Problems we're trying to solve, things we're grinding on. Your clients are no different. Find out what those things are and offer solutions. You will have a better conversation either via Teams or better yet across the table from each other, whether it's a bar, a restaurant, or their office, and find out what matters most to them and then offer up solutions to it. That's how this business works. That's how you organically build trust. Once you organically build trust with people, the business end of it kind of takes care of itself.
So walk me through that as well. Are you getting a lot of inbound referrals? I mean, obviously you've been in the industry for a while, but is it mostly inbound that you're getting now, or are you still kind of going out there? And I know you mentioned last year, obviously, when you started up the new office, like you're in the middle of a pandemic. So what was your approach? Like, how were you actively building relationships and starting a new office? Because that, to me, that sounds like it's obviously a tough time to start something new. So what was your approach, and like, did you have to change things up? What was your approach?
Yeah, you always have to be authentic. You have to be yourself, but you have to change things up depending on what's going on around you. If you don't, you're blind, you're tone deaf, you're not doing the right thing. So when you're talking to people and things may not be going right for them, don't start pitching your services. Just find out how they're doing. Find out what's going on in their lives. The way you treat people when things are bad is how they're going to remember you. So your career can get made during a downturn. If you touch enough people's lives and you end up being a positive influence or a positive part of their life when things are bad, as things start to turn around and get good again, you're going to be right there with them. They're going to remember you. So that's something that I took to heart when we launched the office. I wasn't calling people, telling them what I'm doing. I was calling to find out what they're doing. How are you through this? I talk to 100 people a week. Maybe I can help you learn something from someone else. Maybe I can connect you with someone who's dealing with the same thing you're dealing with. So that's the way I handled the pandemic launch. Once you've been doing this business long enough, yes, you're going to get inbound calls, and my clients hit me up for things all the time. Thank God. I'm fortunate that way. But you still need to kick in a new door every month. My first boss at Robert Half, named Jim Brandenburg, he always said that. He's like, no matter how long you've been doing this, you got to kick in that door once a month. Kick a new door, because it's you get an adrenaline rush out of it, and you always have to make sure that you find your next biggest client. You can't just live on your laurels, I guess, forever. You've got to go hunting every now and again. When you're brand new, you got to be hunting all the time. When you start out in this business, Joel, and I tell this to all my new people, there's 3 levels. I'm a big believer in 3s. So there's 3 levels to this. You start out and you're a sales guy. You're just hoping someone responds to your email, likes your LinkedIn post, takes your call, even if they're telling you no needs now. That's level 1. But then you're going to get the chance to hit a pitch. Someone's going to ask you to do something for them, and you're going to hit the pitch. Then you're going to become something called a vendor. A vendor, you're one of many people fishing in the same lake, trying to get the same fish out of the water. You can make a pretty good living being a vendor. Get enough clients, you get enough vendor lists, you can make a decent living. But the 3rd level, and this is where the sky's the limit, is when you become a problem solver. When your clients don't look at you because they need a network engineer, they look at you because they need to talk to you to get your advice. Should they even hire a network engineer? And if they do, what would that look like? What's the market like for a network engineer? When your clients look at you as a problem solver and they come to you for everything, that's when you really become, I guess, a next level provider.
Yeah, I love that. It's becoming a consultant. You're the person that's. I love the way you put that, though. The problem solver. I haven't heard anyone actually put it that way. So that's super helpful. What about in terms of like the future of recruitment? Like, I'd love to hear a little bit about your take and how, if any, do you see any type of skill changes that need to happen in the future for people to be successful as a recruiter? Or what are your thoughts in terms of trends? Like, one of the things you mentioned was, LinkedIn posts, for example. Do you see branding being more of a viable, kind of necessity for people coming into the industry? Or, what other trends do you think are going to be essential for people to grab hold of to be successful over the next, let's say, 5-10 years in this industry?
I think it's the same in this industry. The things they're pulling it in different places is it would be in any industry. And what I mean by that, the things that are pulling us is technology. It's pulling us one way, where you could almost put what you're looking for into a web application, and it's going to spit out candidates to you, right? That's one way things are being pulled. And then where I try to pull back is where we're talking about relationships. Rather than having someone put in a metric or an algorithm into a web app and spitting out candidates, yeah, that can work fairly well. But it needs to be combined with someone that knows you, knows your environment, knows the market. Because just because someone's spitting out candidates at you doesn't mean it's the right candidate. But if I know my client, I know you, Joel, I know what you're looking for, I know your environment, I know people on your team, I know what you want for Christmas, I know how many kids you have, I know what your goals are. If I find you a candidate, you're going to want to hire them. You won't even need to look at their resume. So it's going to be a balance there between both the technology aspect, which we have to embrace because it does make life easier, but also the human element that's not going away. And if it does, I might have to find myself a new gig because the human element is how I make my money.
Well, and I mean, if we start looking at like automation tools and, you know, some of these advanced ATS, I mean, to your point, it's the same with sales. I mean, there's a lot of automation that's out there for salespeople. And I do think that in some ways, with how much information is out there, I mean, you know, if it's easy to look at a website nowadays and go, yeah, okay, I'm interested in the product, and if it's going to help you save money or make money, it's easy for us to make that decision as to whether or not we need it. But you've got to have that person that's able to come in and share, you know, the product. And so salesmanship, I think, kind of changes over time. But I think with recruitment, you know, it's so funny because you have the side of people that just really do think about like the technical side and go, okay, well, if we've got these keywords, for example, in a resume, or we got these keywords in LinkedIn, it will, you know, we can somehow manufacture the perfect candidate. But when it comes down to it, you know, even through the interview process, you could think someone is a great candidate and maybe they seem like they are, and then 4 months later they're making a move because they weren't ever a right culture fit once they got into it. So I think to your point, you know, where recruiters' value really comes in is it's knowing the client, it's knowing the hiring manager, it's knowing that, and then being able to just, through the amount of conversations that we have, you're able to figure out, okay, would this person really be a good fit at the company? But, you know, just talking about some of those, I guess, tech trends, I mean, what are some of the tech trends that you've kind of implemented yourself that have helped you? And then what are some that, you know, you haven't found helpful in terms of automation and those types of things?
Well, that's a tough question because I still think I could do this job with a desk phone and a phone book, you know?
Yeah.
I'm kind of an old guy. But there are technology helps me the most when I'm planning my day, you know, and I'm looking at what I'm going to do tomorrow. So we have a really great CRM. And so what I try to make sure I do is I put these tasks in my day to budget my time. When you're new, this is vital. You want to be able to know what to do and when, and you want to have your day planned the night before so you can hit the ground running the next day with not a whole lot of thought to your next step. So I use, you know, day planners, Outlook calendar invitations to make me remember what I want to do or what my plan was. That's huge. There are job board posting tools where you can write one description and post them out there to a bunch of different sites all at once. Again, that's something it's huge. You don't want to have to write 17 different job descriptions or actually go post them in different places. Just going to one place and boom, sending them out there. We use something called Broadbean, which is very cool. You know, we can just go to the website, we put it in, and it puts our jobs all over the place. As far as technology goes, being able to be connected and unconnected at the same time is huge. What I mean by that is everyone needs to take time off in this business, but you still need to be a firefighter sometimes. So just having emails or Microsoft Teams go to your cell phone, that's a big deal because you don't have to be 100% plugged in. But if your phone beeps, we all look at it. You can take it. That's not an email I need to take care of right now. Or you go, oh my goodness, this company basically pays my mortgage every month. I better call this client back. That's huge. Other than that, I don't embrace a whole lot of other technologies there, maybe because I haven't been hit across the face with them yet. But when you're dealing with people, you're just dealing with human beings, the best technology you can do is the phone. Pick it up and talk to somebody. That's not going to replace any of these things I'm talking about. Having conversations That's Stone Age stuff. Just pick up the phone and talk to people. Get in the room and talk to people.
It's interesting. I did a poll, right, on LinkedIn. So who knows how reliable that is? Probably not. But I did get a huge response rate. Actually, I got 5,000 people responded, right? And the question I asked was, do you answer unknown numbers? And I've had quite a few people on this show as well. And one of the things that's come up is the amount of cold calling, especially if you're new to the industry, right? So you're established since 2013. So you've got existing relationships. Right. But just given kind of the nature of where we are with spam calls and just, numbers outside the area, for somebody just starting in the industry, do you think it's more challenging now, like using that approach than it was when you started? Or are you like, hey, you're just going to have to kind of do more, more cold calls? Like, what are your thoughts with that?
No, more is not always the answer. I have a phrase I like to use called surgically effective. So rather than make more cold calls, maybe plan your day better and be surgically effective in who you're calling. So when you're leaving a message, your message is probably going to either get deleted as soon as you say your name, or maybe it'll never get listened to, especially the first time around. So it can only be one prong in your approach. You should follow up every voicemail you leave with an email. You should, that way you're touching people more than just once. That's marketing 101. You don't just want to have one touch point. You want to have a multiple. So if you're leaving voicemails, you better have a surgically effective email teed up to follow that up to make sure your message might hit home. And voicemails that you leave, if you're just leaving a voicemail to tell people about you and what you do, no one's going to call you back. No one cares about that. But if you're leaving a voicemail to someone who's got an ad out there and they're looking for a web developer, and you're calling them because you have a web developer, well, maybe they'll pay attention. Maybe they'll listen. They may not call you back, but they might listen. And then down the road, if you're persistently cool, you keep doing that over and over again, your message is going to hit home with people, and they will come back to you. But always follow up your voicemails with an email. And don't just cold email people, because that's annoying too. You want to make sure you've got a chance for people to see your message, understand your message, and care about your message. And then they'll get back to you.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I just, I'm always thinking of like, the future for people coming into the industry, in particular, just because I think there's a lot, like, for example, every newsletters, for example, email newsletters, I get a million of those. And it seemed like it was effective a couple of years ago, and now they're everywhere. Same with, like LinkedIn messages, for example. I think LinkedIn is really powerful, but obviously since the pandemic, it's like automation has really kicked in. So I'm always just curious to hear from leaders, like how, if you're bringing somebody brand new into the industry, how you're kind of prepping them to, into the recruitment world. And because I also think that like a lot of just everything, even when it comes to sales, is relationship building, and relationships just take time. And so it's kind of balancing that, just that with the industry, where it's like, it takes time to build meaningful relationships. Yeah. But obviously when you get into recruitment, there's such an emphasis in like short-term results, because you got to get short-term results. But so much, it just seems like over time, if you're good at what you're doing and you're learning and you're quick and you're able to execute, then those relationships are going to naturally build. So what, when you were bringing new people in at Robert Half, like what were some of the characteristics of people that were successful? And like, what were some of the things that you would see like pretty quickly where you'd go, okay, this person isn't going to be successful? What were some of those core key characteristics?
It's hard. I gotta confess, I think I miss about as many as I hit when it comes to hiring. It can be tough, because when you're hiring for sales or hiring for recruitment, you're trying to measure something that you can't really get out of an interview. You're trying to measure grit, heart, determination, and you can't necessarily pick that up in an interview. You can pick up whether you like someone, whether you think that they're personable. but people are going to tell you what you want to hear in an interview. So if you say, hey, I need you to come in and make 80 phone calls a day. Can you do that? Everyone says, yeah, of course I can do that. I make 80 phone calls every day anyway, of course. And they come in and they don't do it. And that's one of those things where every time you hire someone in their first day or their second day, and it seems like they're all of a sudden allergic to the phone, it's like, I got taken for a ride again. When you have someone in and they're hungry to get on the phone, they want to role play with you. They want to run scenarios by you and ask you questions. How would you handle this? How would you handle that? And then they use that. You pick up on that pretty quickly. Within a day or two, you'll see something different about the person that is hungry to have those conversations, has questions, an inquisitive mind, wants to know what makes a company or a business work and what that manager's role is in it. That's something that, again, you can't really interview for it. You hope for the best when you hire them, but you just show them, all right, this is what's expected. And if they start doing it day one, then you know you've got the right person in the seat.
How are you guys handling, with like virtual settings, right? Because I think like within recruitment, it's helpful to be around other people. So you learn by osmosis. So for example, if you're hearing Jim over there's, closing a candidate, and then Sarah over there is, getting a job order, they're taking a job order, and so much is like learning through osmosis. Have you guys come up with a strategy in terms of like how you bring someone new in like a virtual environment and how you're, I guess, kind of cloning that experience virtually? Like how are you guys handling that?
Yeah, if I told you I knew exactly how to do this, I'd be making it up, man.
No, it came up recently. It was an interview with Greg Savage, and he brought that up, and I was like, man, that's such an unusual, an unusual issue to arise from like virtual learning, especially if you're brand new into the industry. So, well, at least you're honest about it.
Well, it's hard because I learned early on as a leader, you want to have your best people in the same room with your new people.
Exactly.
But there's challenges to that.
Yeah.
So I think the way you overcome that is you set up meetings like this in the morning where we all talk about our problems and talk about what our day is going to be like and what our goals are and what we're trying to accomplish. And then at the end of the day, you bring each other back together to see in a very public way, how did we do? What challenges did you run into? How can we overcome them tomorrow? But nothing, in my opinion, will beat having everybody together and doing this together, because there's these casual interactions that happen when we're all in the same room that you can't recreate virtually. I'm not very good at building a culture virtually.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that really is. So when I say I don't know exactly how to tackle this, I mean it. It's you try to you play the hand you're dealt. And right now the hand we're dealt is mostly virtual. So you better make sure you assign your new people to a mentor. And you better make sure that mentor is prepared to check in with the new person and bring him or her along as she needs it. That's probably the way to go until we're able to all be together again.
Oh, awesome. Well, I didn't mean to spring that one on you. I know it's
I can take it. It's all right.
Good. No, I love that. Well, we're coming up to about 40 minutes, and I like to keep these interviews, right in that 40 to 45 minute mark. But yeah, so one of the ways I've been wrapping up the show, and we kind of covered this, but I'd love to just kind of get some wisdom from you. And this is really for people who are just starting out in the industry. Obviously, we've mentioned it. 2020 was a tough year, I think, mentally in terms of like staying at home. But it was an awesome year for so many recruiters that I talked to. It kind of seemed like some of the bad apples kind of dropped out, and people who weren't doing their job well. And it's created a really unique opportunity for people to be successful. So if you were just starting out right now, let's say you're 3 to 6 months into your career as a recruiter, what advice would you have for someone in order to be successful, and how do you coach people in that situation? I'd love to hear from you on that.
Yeah. First thing, listen to understand, not to respond. So first, starting out, every conversation you have, treat it like gold. When you're talking, you're just saying stuff you already know. When you're listening, you're going to learn something. So pay attention to that. Listen to the people you're talking to. Listen to the people whose questions, whose answers you're trying to get with your questions, and listen to understand what they're saying. People will come back to you if they think you heard them. People will take your call if you think you listen to them. If all you do is talk at people all day long and just spit out words or phrases you heard other people say, you're going to fail. You got to be your authentic self and be your best listening self, and you'll be on the right path.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that's the core of real relationship, right? You never, if you're in a marriage, you don't do that well if all you're doing is talking. You've really got to listen to that other person, and it's the core of relationships. So I love that, Brian, and appreciate all the insights you brought. How can people reach you? How can people connect with you? How can people in Milwaukee that are looking for a new place to call home, how can they get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
Well, you can always go to vaco.com, VACO.com. I'm there. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. Hit me up on LinkedIn any way you can. I also have a post out there on LinkedIn because I am hiring internally. It's got my email address on it. Feel free to shoot your resume over. We'll have a conversation. But probably the best way, Vaco.com. It's easy to remember, VACO.com. Check out that website. And we have a special page just for Wisconsin, Milwaukee.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And yeah, definitely anybody who is in Milwaukee specifically looking for a new recruitment role, definitely connect with Brian and just connect with him on LinkedIn anyway. He's definitely somebody that locally you want to follow and be connected with. And then check out Vaco. We'll put those links into the comment as well. It looks like right now we've got about 13 people out there, but I did see we were kind of fluctuating the whole time between 15 to 20 people out there. So everyone out there, we appreciate you guys and just a couple of people who interacted as well. Obviously, Michael, Jamie, and then anyone else watching this afterward. We're going to have a new show on Monday as well, so I'll have more information on the guests as well. If you've got further questions that you didn't feel like got answered, feel free to DM myself, and I can get you in touch with Brian as well. But Brian, appreciate it again, man. Appreciate your time, and looking forward to seeing what you accomplish here in 2021 with the office, and looking forward to hearing that new announcement too for the new recruiter you bring on board. So appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks for having me, man.
All right, no worries. And thanks everyone else that was out there. As a reminder, we are sponsored by Hoxo Media, and we are a leading inbound marketing agency. So if you need help with inbound marketing and LinkedIn strategy, please DM me as well. And we look forward to connecting again next Monday.